Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you from a chill, kind of gray, but thankfully a little bit cooler afternoon here in Accra. It is T-minus 1 week before I won't say escape, but must move on to the cold. So I'm savoring all the sun rays that are coming my way until then. And I was just catching up with my guest about where he is. And I'm like, everyone's like, it's cold. It's cold everywhere. It's unseasonably cold everywhere. So when we talk about climate, folks, it's the heat and the cold. And whew, totally other conversation. Let's get started with something that's a little bit more joyful to talk about, which is how we met and who my guest is. So let me get to his bio. He is the founder and CEO of TBTM, a media fintech that uses content to onboard global audiences to inclusive financial solutions with partners like MasterCard. His international upbringing informed his company's vision for turning culture into currency for creators and fans worldwide. While still a student at Harvard, he played a supporting role in Steven Spielberg's Amistad and went on to top charts with his band, winning a Billboard Songwriting Award. As a host and producer, he pioneered multi-platform interactive content with Oprah Winfrey and major media platforms including ABC Disney and Univision, earning 3 Emmy nods and a Royal Television Society Award. His original Take Back the Mic TV series has won 7 major international awards and achieved 1.1 billion media impressions worldwide. Wow, that's a lot. He has delivered electrifying speeches on issues of youth culture and tech for UK Parliament, the United Nations, and the world's most elite business schools, including Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Wharton, Cambridge, and London School of Economics. He has interviewed celebrities and global luminaries ranging from Archbishop Desmond Tutu and Kofi Annan to Zoe Saldana, Kevin Hart, and Steve Wozniak, among others. Most recently, he has delivered keynote speeches for MasterCard, Mobile World Congress in Barcelona and Kigali, as well as Super Return Africa, the continent's top investment forum, which just is wrapping up. I didn't even know anything about it, but it's just wrapping up now in South Africa. So I definitely want to hear more about that. Derrick, DNA Ashong, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So a bit of background, folks, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in the conversation. I met Derrick in person in June of this year at the Charter Cities Institute Summit. So it's the Charter Cities Summit, which took place in Nairobi, Kenya. He was pitching and I was like, hey, he's got in. So we talked, we were like, hey, yay, we're in the same space. Wonderful. Fast forward, when I reached out to invite him to the podcast, I was searching through my inbox, and lo and behold, we have interacted in the past.
Back in the day.
How interesting. So he's a brother from the past, the present, and the future. So Derrick, let's get started. Where are you from? Where are you local? And what is your craft?
Okay, so I'm originally from Accra, born in Accra, raised there, as well as in Brooklyn and in Riyadh and in Doha. I am currently in Lisbon, Portugal, and I will be here for the next few months, getting settled in my new space.
Okay.
And my craft is actually the intersection of artistry and technology. And I'm looking to use those skills to build a bigger voice or to amplify the voices of African creatives as well as many others.
Nice. So Accra is a big little city.
No doubt.
So tell us more about your Accra.
So my mother's family grew up in Dansoman, but she's from Latte actually. And my dad's side is from Adabraka, official town.
Okay.
And so as a child, I was there and in Laboni. And then when I go back, I just go to visit. So I go to the familial homes, but I mostly these days, I feel like I live at Emirates Terminal 3 in Dubai. So
right.
Always on the road.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Okay. Dansaman, Latte, and Adabraka. So would you say, and what languages do you have from your growing up?
Okay. Inuoga, and then Mitzi Tree, Kakra, like a tiny bit, but not real good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I hear God very well, but my accent is funny because I grew up speaking a bunch of other languages from overseas as well. but I can understand Chi so long as we're not talking about like macroeconomics. It needs
Someday,
work, though. It needs work.
right. But someday you'll have business. We'll have business lingo in all of our African languages. I was listening to a woman who does content, Gandangbe content, and she uncovered a book that was physics, science, and philosophy in Ga back in the day. So before we decided to abandon our own local languages in writing and translating, she found this book. And I was aware of that because I work with linguists at Legon on some projects, and they've written math books, all of these things that never see the light of day because culturally we haven't yet decided that we want to prioritize our mother tongues. That's my mission in a large part. And so one day you may be able to listen and learn how to speak in macroeconomic terms in Sri and Ga and whatever other
Honestly,
languages.
what I need to do is just come home and hang out for a while and remember. I think
Yes, that part.
because that's the most interesting thing for me about languages is whenever I move into a new ecosystem, I absorb a little bit of the linguistic thing. So when I left Ghana, I spoke Ga, Chi, and Latte and English. But then growing up in New York, it's who you're going to talk to. And it happened to be that a lot of the people who were there had come over. They were part of my dad's ecosystem. They'd gone to medical school together, or they grew up together in Adabraka or whatever, what have you. So I thought that all Ghanaians speak Ga when I was growing up.
Oh, okay. Me too, actually. Me too.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So then I get to be a early teens or whatever, 12, and I got a rude awakening. And
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
will look at me and they'll see Akan. They won't see Ga.
Right.
So they'll
right.
automatically speak to me in Chi.
Yeah.
And I'm like talking real slow and responding in English. And they're like, yo, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, forgive me. Like, you forgot your culture. I'm like, no, I remember the other side. Your accent is bad. I'm like, damn, yo, y'all hard body. But
Really,
but I think that
yeah.
it's important. Like even with my kids, I have them doing classes on a
Oh,
regular
good.
basis with their grandpa, with my dad, so
Oh,
that
good.
even though they're growing up overseas, they learn to speak Ga.
Yeah. So what are these other languages that you speak now?
Okay, so now I can get by in Portuguese, although now I'm discovering that Brazilian Portuguese and Portuguese is very different.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah, so
Very.
I learned Brazilian Portuguese because I was studying in Brazil back in the day. And then now I'm getting better with Portuguese. I can understand Spanish and speak decently if I need to. And I understand French. Those are the
Okay.
other.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. So since we're talking about languages and you're settling in a new space, let's talk about Glocal speak. So can you share a word, a phrase, or a saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience anywhere, and why or how you came to value it or come to value it as Glocal speak?
Okay, so I'll give you a quote, a proverb that my mother used to say to me all the time. And this one is powerful, not only because it resonates. My mother's no longer with us here, but I still keep her very close to my heart. And a lot of what she taught me is more resonant now than ever. And I was just sharing this with one of my mentors maybe a week ago. And my mother used to always say, "Obanyansafo wo bunobe wankanasem," which basically means the wise child need only be spoken to in Proverbs, right? A child is wise. We give them Proverbs. We do not speak of things. Okay. And that was so profound because I didn't realize the power of it when I was a kid. But what happened is it taught me that when you listen closely,
Yeah.
you listen for what is said and you listen for what is unsaid. And I apply that in life, in business, in family, in my travels around the world. I see what is obvious and hopefully often enough what is subtextual. And that makes it so much easier to connect with people, to understand with people, to engage with folks, to not just come in with a cultural framework of this is how it's going to be, because this is what I expect, which I think a lot of people fall into, but instead to be reading the lines in between the lines, the outlines, what's happening on the paper, what's happening behind the paper, what kind of pen are we writing this ink, pencil, crayon, and it gives you a different kind of connection from that very specific Chi Akan proverb. It gives me a lens with which I view the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. as you say that, and the ability to understand and see differently, I wonder how that influenced your moving into tech, because this tech that we're in now is very difficult to actually be in the presence to understand the nuance in the way that we would have or think we do when we're in person. So now that everything is digital and mostly digital, tell us more about how you came into this world of being a techpreneur. Because I would say you're a techpreneur in large part. FinTech, tell us about your techpreneur journey.
So it's interesting because I was always into technology. So when I was young, I remember when I was in like the fourth or fifth grade and I was in school in Riyadh. And we had the opportunity to pick a class. And I was like, oh, I want to pick this class is computer science, logo. And we would literally
Oh,
get on our
wow.
little
Yeah.
Apples back in the day, and we would
Yeah.
use like the logo to program the thing to draw pictures or whatever. And it gave me an understanding of, oh, how do you think about coding, and how do you think about like how you translate an idea through a particular programming language to gain an outcome. Then we learned BASIC and all this stuff. This is way before the web. And so when I went to college, I thought, okay, I did a lot of like math and science when I was in the Middle East. I did GCSEs in the British system. And then I was going to go from GCSE, what used to be called O levels, into A levels. And my A levels were math, physics, and chemistry. But then I moved back to the United States and they had all of this other stuff with it, humanities and history and culture. And so I kept doing like physics because I loved it. But when I got to go to college, I was like, man, I want to understand more about these social dynamics, especially because coming in as an immigrant, you know, what I thought the US was from when I was a kid is very different. I left when I was 8 years old to the Middle East. I came back when I was like 16, completely different planet. And I wanted to understand what were the dynamics. Why is it that certain people felt certain ways? Why did people assume that, oh, if you speak a certain way or if you're intelligent, you're acting white or whatever the case may be? When I grew up, I was like, oh, the smart kids are like the Nigerian kids and the Ghanaian kids and the kids from Indonesia and the kids from Sweden. Like those ones, these kids study hard. Indian kids, they study hard. Then certain kids from other countries, I don't know, the English kids, Australian kids, it was laughing. You know what I'm saying? It was a little laid back. So it's like Scottish kids, we don't study. English kids, not so much. So it was like, and these are all stereotypes, but it wasn't broken down according to like, racial lines. I didn't understand that stuff until I got to the US. So I started learning more and studying more when I was in college into the humanities. It took me off of like the science and technology track. But I always had this passion and this interest in science and technology. So as I came to graduate, I started looking more and more at how do these things intersect. And when I was in graduate school, I was in an ethnomusicology program. But the project that I sought to do, to pursue, I guess you could call it a cultural anthropology of technology. And specifically, I've been doing a bunch of stuff with open source software and Red Hat Linux and how do we set up these different elements to do things that are parallel to what was happening from the traditional closed source projects. And how do you build new kinds of solutions and tools? And I was working with some really smart and close friends of mine who are deep on the tech side. My college roommates and best friends, Jonathan and Dave, these guys are brilliant and much more deeply invested in the technology side than I was. And I'm like straddling these two worlds. And I was like, wait, I see something here. And I'm like, what if you understood how these trends in open source software could be mapped onto concepts of open source culture? If you think about what we're doing here, it's different kinds of intellectual property, right? Whether it's a piece of software, whether it's a song, whether it's a recording or a film or a TV show, it's all, and from a legal perspective, IP. And from a human perspective, it's creativity. How do you make something where there was nothing? Or how do you build upon what others have built, which is more realistically what we do? And I was like, okay, if you think about it that way, then you can actually build completely different models for the entertainment sector if you root them in some of the trend lines that are happening with the technology sector and how they're thinking differently about ownership, sharing, distribution, co-creation. What does that mean for the future? And so that is how I wound up basically writing out this treatise about the future of open source content. And that got a couple of really smart people read it in some interesting environments Harvard Law School, the Berkman Center for Internet and Society, which is now university-wide. Some really cool people in LA and in San Francisco and Seattle. And basically one gentleman who was coming out of the entertainment sector, a guy named Dave Stewart, who's best known as one half of the Eurythmics with Annie Lennox. He and I had met as I was presenting some of these ideas at a conference, and we connected through another colleague, and then we started talking. Then we hung out in New York, and I was in LA. We caught him in LA, and blah, 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 blah. One day he calls me, and I'm taking a little break from grad school. He's, hey, man, I know you're in school, but like I'm starting this new company, and I think you should come and help run it and basically lead the business development. And I was like, I'm in school. I can't go. And he's just like, Derrick, where are you in school? I was like, I'm in school in Boston. He's like, and where do you live? I was like, I live in Brooklyn. So you're not that into the school thing, innit?
Ah!
Oh my God, how you gonna read me like this in a public square? Me at my big age, man. I was like, damn. So I happened to be going to LA at the time, and he's like, yo, why don't you just come and talk? And this dude is gonna take me in. I'd already been in the entertainment sector, so I'm not easily like, wow. I had already done cool projects in film. I'd worked with luminaries. I'd met celebrities. I'd done blah, blah, blah. But the first day, I go to the studio and he's like, yeah, this is my friend Natalie and Bruglia. I was like, oh, hello, blah, 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 blah. He's like, yeah, tonight we'll go to dinner with Annie Lennox. And he's like, oh, and next week we have a thing with Anthony Hopkins. And then we do one with HBO with Bono and The Edge. And I was like, oh, y'all are not playing around. And I just started working on these projects with different people. And I never went back to graduate school. And what happened is all the work that I had done in looking at how technology would shape the future of entertainment, they were interested in, okay, how do you build solutions around that? So I started working, how could you build solutions? And then I started building new relationships and connections that led me deeper and deeper into how do you push the envelope on what technology can do for the entertainment sector. And that was the beginning for me.
So interesting. I love it. I love it. I'm such a bookworm. And so the idea of, I think the foundation of you being in an academic context, because what you did take from it was the ability to understand how to find information, right? And so I think that's one of the key pieces of us now understanding how this whole AI movement plays into how are we finding information. So back to the idea of, open source content, though we have all this content, how are we actually finding it and properly, and I don't want to say properly, but adequately understanding how to validate it, understand it, and then transform it into something of value, right? Because we think everything we get from those AI platforms is valuable, blah, 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 blah. It is, it may not be. So in that work that you did, what were some of the financial implications that you actually did? Because they wanted to know I'm sure that was part of the work, is understanding like, what is this? And so how it transitions into this context of your fintech work, because I'm thinking that's where that went.
Yeah, absolutely. So then let me talk a little bit about some of the financial implications, the things that I discovered early, and then I'll tie it in with what's happening in AI today. I think that let's start with music first. Let's just begin because it makes it simpler. And I think what most people don't realize is that recording artists don't make money selling records. Record labels make money selling records. Recording artists make money playing tours, playing events, doing endorsements, coming up with their little vodka brand or whatever they can, ancillary revenue streams, if they've reached a high enough level of notoriety that they can monetize across different verticals. But insofar as like how much they get paid when somebody would buy a record, very little, if anything, at all. Most recording artists throughout history have been in debt to the record label. Okay. And it's not because they're not good or people don't like the music or whatever. It's because the methodology, the way in which the payments were structured was designed by industry and lawyers for the industry who had a great deal more leverage than an unknown artist who's just getting started and signs to a deal that will abrogate any ability for them to monetize outside of what the industry has already prescribed, such that once they have leverage later on, those early contracts have still put a cap on the ways in which you can monetize your creativity. If you're a songwriter, different. That's beautiful. But still, recording artists don't make money selling records. Record labels do. And so what we realized at the time is, wow, there was a lot of hype This was in the early 2000s. There was a lot of hype about file sharing, Napster back in the day, and peer-to-peer file sharing, and all of these concepts. And the record labels in the RIAA, the Recording Industry Association of America, were at the time suing kids for using things like LimeWire, Kazaa, all this stuff that people don't even remember anymore. But we were there in those times, and we're watching what was going on. And the thing we looked at is, I was like, you know what? This is crazy. Like, why would I want to sue a kid that loves my music? So I think as an artist, label things a little bit differently, right? And I'll give you a little bit of context of how I realized there's a different way to look at this, and then we'll tie it into what's happening now. So when I was in graduate school in like the mid 2000s, I'd gone and done a track for this old classic Sweet Mother song. And I recorded it with my band. I took them to Ghana. We recorded with a bunch of musicians in the crowd. We had TV3 Studios back in the day with Panji Anoff and the Pigeon Rhythm Collective. It was super dope. We had such a good time. So much fun. And then we went back to the States, and one of my boys, Wayne and Wax, he was also a graduate student, but he was a DJ, and he'd been studying in Jamaica and came back to Cambridge. He listened to one of the tracks. He's like, yo, man, could you send me a check of this? I was like, yeah, I sent it to him. He said, yo, hey, check this out. And he sends me this MP3, and he had remixed the song. And I was like, yo, this beat is heavy, bro. This is so fresh. I'm going to take this remix and turn it into a whole new song. And so we did a remake of Sweet Mother. Then he did a remix beat. And then we did a remake of the remix of the remake for a whole new song, which we called Sweet Remix. That song, we then shot a music video for in Accra. And it charted top 5 in the country. At the time, it was like Ellie, Usher, Beyonce, and then my band. Just guys, because while that was happening, I was in the library researching the ups and downs of financial modeling in the record industry in the United States. And they're like, bro, your stuff is blowing up back home, bro. I was like, oh, I didn't. So I went back home, and it was true. It was blowing up. Like I remember I was in like some store or something, getting something, and I think it was like a currency exchange. And like this video is playing on the thing, and the lady's there, she's passing the money, and then the other lady's there looking at the screen, and she's looking at me. And she's looking at the screen, go look at me. I love it. Hey, is that you? I was like, I'm sorry. What was that me? What was that me? Oh. It was so much fun. It was super dope. We had a great time.
Sounds like it, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We had a great time. And then I was like, okay, so this is awesome. All these people are listening to my music. We got picked up on BBC World Service, Channel O, MTV Base, BBC One Extra. All these different channels like radio and video started airing our stuff all around the world. The combined listenership was north of 150 million listeners worldwide. And I'm back in grad school working on my research. And the biggest thing I'm thinking at that point is, man, 150 million people have heard my track, potentially. And I'm not concerned with if they bought it. I'm concerned with where they are and if they would buy a ticket if I went and played there. Because as a recording artist, I make money playing live, which most people don't realize. And that is where I'm like, yo, everything we've been doing, I'd already written the fan manifesto, right? I'd already looked at how do we do this? And basically that concept, the work that we did, I was like, we need to build the technological underpinnings to understand the engagement and the nature of the relationship between the creator and the consumer, between the artist and the fan. And the best way we can understand that and to really get a deep insight into what the fan cares about while also respecting them and respecting their privacy is to give them a reason to share their data with us, not just go out and scrape the internet to try to understand everything about you, but to give you a reason to share. So how do we reward our best fans? Because I care more about knowing who they are and what they want. How can we build a deeper relationship? And that is what started me on my fintech journey. Because on the fintech side, that's what we do. We build tools that enable you to reward. They automate the recognition of who is consuming the content, who has created the content. How do you reward the creator and the consumer simultaneously without them having to take any extra steps? I don't want to get too technical into how it's done, but it's viable. It works. We've tested it with multiple parties. and multiple different countries. And it's a very exciting prospect, because what it means is that, as opposed to having artists always stuck in this bind of waiting for an institution to come and say, you have done well enough that we give you the stamp of approval, you can take it to another level. It's like, no, the artists in the community can do that together. And yeah, we know that on social media, you can build a following, et cetera. Yeah, but it's harder to monetize than people think. But if you build solutions that automate some of the modernization, and that can be leveraged across multiple platforms, now all of a sudden, kind of remove the middle person, and you enable the artist and the fan to build together. And that's what I'm interested in. And I'll just say one more thing and I'll pause, because you're talking about like the AI component. I think that what's happening with AI right now is quite interesting, because we face all these challenges in the world, right? We were just talking about how it's cold in Lisbon. At least I'm cold. It's unseasonably cold. It's cold in Accra. Everybody cold this winter. Why is it all unseasonably cold? Somebody be like, it's El Nino. Somebody be like, it's La Nina. Somebody will say it just happens. Like, who knows what? But we understand that climate change is going to disrupt weather patterns and things like that, such that it's not just that the world gets warmer. Some places get colder. And it's a real issue. And there may be global leadership that is slow in taking up the challenge of addressing it currently, because the older generations make money off of the status quo, and they're willing to externalize the cost to their children and their grandchildren, and their great-great-grandchildren, because they won't be alive to suffer. And that says something about the current order and the people running the world, right? Something that we should be very much aware of as we determine who we our future leaders to be. But what's happened is you have real issues like climate. You have real issues like persistent poverty or lack of access to education or opportunity around the world. You would think that you could build the most powerful technologies known to humankind, and they're going to solve the problems of resource distribution, of persistent inflation, of deflation, of rising housing prices, of lack of access to educational opportunities for people that desperately need them, of the lack of being able to match labor concentrations with places where there's labor demand, and the flow of people and resources and material and supply chains across borders and back and forth. And how do you better integrate people into new societies while enabling them to remain connected to the old societies, so the new societies that desperately need the people don't feel overrun by the people, and the people who come to work don't feel like they're disrespected and not appreciated for their contributions. You can use the most powerful technologies in the world to solve these macroeconomic and social and political issues, as well as the climate. And the biggest companies on the planet have taken the most powerful technology known to humankind, and they've used it to make videos. And yes, basically say, oh, we took all the songs that were ever written, and now we can fake songs so that we don't have to pay songwriters anymore. And I'm like, that's the power of technology in the modern era, that the solution you're creating is not one that solves for our greatest human challenges. How do we get access to quality healthcare for 7 or 8 billion people? The solution you're creating is like, how do we make stupid videos online and don't pay the artist for it? And I approach it from this perspective because, as I said earlier, recording artists don't make money selling records. Record labels do. And what you find is that we have a society where anything goes in our current capitalist architecture. Anything goes as long as it makes money, right? In the US, we'll say, hey, it's just business. It's not personal. Ask any business person around the world. They'll tell you that business is always personal. Nobody wants to do a deal with somebody they don't think will actually produce or pay them or show up on time or be collaborative. Nobody's going to do a deal with somebody they think is going to steal from them. It's always personal. You're always making that question about what is the character and the capability of this counterparty. But we say it's not business, it's personal, in order to create an excuse for taking advantage of people. And that is what the current ecosystem is doing using AI. Instead of leveraging technology to solve difficult problems, we're using it to advance what we've always done, which is take advantage of artists who create because they must, because they care. They don't think about the money. They do it because it's a part of them. And now we're using that to obviate the need to spend the time to develop that creative capability. And so we'll develop a generation of people, if we're not careful, who never learn to be creative. That would be a permanent harm to humanity. I think it's a great time to have real conversations about who we want to be. And that should lead the technology.
Whew. This is why you're a speaker. This is why you are, speaking. Yeah. Well, you've said so much, and this is like keynote level conversation around youth and culture and the future. And these are conversations that we're not having and engaging the youth on. So what you just described is what your company does. Amp.it, and it's an app. So I'm curious about just kind of going into that a little bit deeper, because I watched a little video about you explaining exactly how it works. How do you, because the key thing was like, how do you know who they are? And I think that's the biggest nugget that we need to crack, particularly because we do have this access gap, and we have this, and it's an economic access gap, because we have the masses who kind of have access, kind of don't, but we also don't have a lot of data on who they are necessarily. Like someone was saying that the UK was up in arms because, this digital ID, et cetera, et cetera. In most African countries, we already have digital ID. That's the Ghana card. In Nigeria, that's their national ID as well. And so are you finding that particularly in our, in the developing nations, which I think this is probably more widespread, you're able to get that information or more information on the masses that you're actually trying to read? Because that's young people. Young people aren't necessarily the middle class. They are part of the masses.
Yeah. So I think that's a great question. And the answer is actually quite simple. The way that our technology works is it incentivizes the user to tell us who they are.
Okay.
So basically what will happen is you can engage with content, and the people who follow you will see what you're doing or what have you, but you don't have to tell anybody in particular. But then a creator or a brand or a producer or a media company can create a campaign and say, we're going to run this campaign from this and this and this time, and we're going to have these number of people be able to go backstage. So we did an activation with a big media company a couple years ago where we actually had the community select which artists would perform live at the end of their big annual conference. And then the artists got to go, and then the fans get to go with them. We've done projects where we have a whole TV series, Take Back the Mic Africa, or even the one we did in the Caribbean, where the artists compete to be in the show, but then they win a prize to go to a finale and the final, and the other folks also might go with them. That's what we did in the first season in Latin America. There's all kinds of interesting things. We did another one with the big telco where we did a virtual concert where the audience decided who were the artists that were going to participate, right? And so all kinds of cool things come in when you give people a reason to participate, and you say, oh, the artist gets something and the audience gets something, and the artists actually rally the audiences, and the technology helps the ecosystem facilitate and connect with each other, and it just does it automatically. So what we do is we then observe what's working, what's not working, what do they like, what do they don't like, and then we tweak. And so the project has actually completed its beta. It's going to go officially live next year, which I'm super excited about. It's been a long road, but it's actually very powerful, and it does some really cool things because the underlying technology makes it possible to take some of that reward capability into the real world. And I can't say a lot about that before the launch, but it's not, oh, you're just getting this theoretical benefit. When it officially launches, you have actual, tangible, real world benefits based upon the value that's generated by your activity online. We know this value for every time you watch something, for every time you click, for every time you even scroll past, for every time you share, for every time you hit play. There's value. How much of that goes to you as the end user? How much of it goes to the content creator? That's the issue that I think needs to be solved for. It has to be done so from a perspective of the people matter. And the technology and the companies that leverage it should be facilitating a better experience for people. And I do not think that's what's happening in Silicon Valley right now. I don't think that's what's happening in social media right now. And it's definitely not what's happening with AI. And so when I look at our cultures in the emerging markets, I'm like, hey, if we're going to build things for ourselves and what we believe in and what we want, then our values should be a part of that. Because I think that what's happened in many parts of the West is values have been imbued in these platforms, but the values were not discussed and the values were not interrogated. So it's not that these platforms are lacking any values. It's that the values may not have much to do with what is good for their users. And I think that's a problem.
I like what you said about, or I want to kind of interrogate what you said about the ecosystem as it is, because I believe that where we transcend the systems that are not serving us is when we decide that they are ecosystems as opposed to institutions. Because what I am experiencing, the existing, I want to say the Billionaire Boys Club, and also many of our governments, is that those are institutions, and the idea of an institution, just in terms of vocabulary, is what is shackling the people, right? Because these are places that are, again, as you say, these structures that we didn't have input on. Someone has created them, and they've had these, values that are imputed into them, and we just happen on them, or they've been projected onto us. So when you think about the ideal ecosystem for this new landscape that you're looking at, because you have your piece, but then in terms of like scaling that into a broader cultural way beyond just music, but replacing what we see as the storytellers platforms, that's the YouTubes and the Googles and et cetera. What does that look like to you?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I have to be thoughtful about how I answer. I don't want to violate anybody's English.
Yes.
But I think that there's an opportunity to build new kinds of platform. And I think that there is a real need and an opportunity in the way that the platforms are structured right now. Is they're attention machines, right? We're going to garner and monetize attention. And it doesn't matter what gets the attention, right? Was it positive? Was it negative? Did it make you feel good? Did it make you feel bad? Did it make you laugh, make you cry? Or did it make you mad? Did it create more love in society? Did it create more hate? Irrelevant to these platforms. They don't care. They monetize the attention. So whatever gets maximal attention is going to monetize the most. And if you think about how human beings function, if you were in, let's go way beyond pre-technology, back in the day, cavemen and women chilling in the drink, and like you're there with your little baby and hanging out, talking, drawing them drawings on the wall so that people 10,000 ladies can be like, oh man, it was here. Why are you doing that? You're chilling. Everything is cool. You're like relaxed. You may be paying attention, but you're like in the mix. Next thing you know, you hear outside, and it sounds like a saber-toothed tiger. Oh, everybody is aware. Everybody grab your spears. We might have to handle this. Put the babies and the mommies in the back. We got this, right? We are conditioned to pay attention to a potential threat. We don't have to pay much attention when everything is cool, because everything's by nature cool. We can't be on high alert all the time. It's not healthy. The adrenaline kicks in when there's a problem. Okay, so what's going to capture the most attention? The chill, mellow vibes that makes everybody feel at peace, or threat? Gotta respond, gotta do something. And that's why the internet is beset and just completely flooded with rage bait and all kinds of negativity. And people are monetizing a form of human sacrifice, specifically a sacrifice of our humanity. Okay? And we say that's okay because, hey, it ain't personal. It's just business. It's deeply personal. When you look at what happens to some of these kids that spend a bunch of time scrolling on Instagram and whatnot, and what it does to how young people see themselves, how they see each other, how young girls see themselves. What is this all about, right? And so I would argue that we need to start building platforms that go beyond the monetization of attention, right? And that means that some of what happens with the platform is experienced online, and some of it is not.
Exactly. I get it. That is it. Okay. So the part that's not, that leads me to take a step back and ask you, why the where? So you said you're in Lisbon. Why the where? How did you come to be living, working, and playing there?
Oh, my kids have gotten good at tennis, and they were doing some really cool things. And it turned out that this was a really great place for them to study and learn and grow academically and athletically. We looked at a bunch of different places, and we realized like this felt good. And so I'm here for them. Yeah. And then I'm working on a really cool project in Morocco. I can't say too much about it yet, but it's amazing. And it is a extension of everything we're discussing, because we're not just theorizing this, we're working on solutions. And I have some really wonderful partners there, and in a couple of other African countries that we're hoping to be able to also announce soon. This Lisbon gives me a chance to be close to my kids while I'm like an hour and a half flight from Morocco, And so I
Yeah.
can live and work, and that is why I am here now.
It makes a lot of sense. So you kind of touched on, and you can tell us what you can, because we met when you were at this Charter City Summit speaking about this Morocco project. And so tell us about how that became an opportunity for you, and as much as you can tell us about what the project is about.
Yeah, for sure. I talked to one of our investors. We had dinner in Dubai maybe a little over a year ago. And he knew that we were working on this project for how do you better empower African creatives while also serving the needs of global creatives and building a very powerful commercial and creative bridge between creatives and innovators and how you build an ecosystem. And that while we're having that conversation, he's like, hey, for what you're talking about, you really should look in Morocco. There's all these things happening. There's this kind of trends, and you should really check it out. And then another colleague mentioned it, and they're like, yo, you really should look at what's going on in Morocco. So I just went to see, and I was blown away. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And so I went back the next week, and yeah, I'm like that. And then I learned a bunch of things, and then I stayed for a month, and then I left, and then I went back, and I spent a good portion of the year going back and forth to Morocco, just meeting people, connecting, talking about things, seeing things, visiting different parts of the country, seeing what was possible, identifying who I thought could be good partners, vetting who might be bad partners, going through a lot of just conversation and connection and engagement because business is personal. And I found the people that I believed in and who believed in what we were doing. And we realized that this would be probably of all the places we considered, this would be the one that would go first because they were that committed to making something extraordinary happen. And so I am very much involved in building an ecosystem for innovation. I don't want to say more than that, but it is a very powerful and significant project, and it will be able to operate at scale. And so that's what I spend 24/7 on now. I mean, everything that I've mentioned in terms of technology and content and creativity and how do you make art and how do you compensate artists and how do you reward the fan, the people who make our artists possible. What I'm looking to do is build the infrastructure to house, accelerate, and amplify those tools and others. And we're going to launch that in Morocco.
We're here for it. We cannot wait. We cannot wait for that. And so, besides that being the new and next about what you're working on, it probably took a little bit of, I want to say, mind meeting, right? Within yourself and within your community. And so I want to ask you about your mindset hack. So how do you, in this, I'm working often and doing all these things, how do you hack your mindset? How do you get in the zone? Whatever you want to call it. What's your mindset hack?
That's a really good thing. A couple of things. One, I practice martial arts. I teach martial arts. And so that is something, a way of like really centering myself. We have this one, our first kata is called Sanchin, which means 3 conflicts, mind, body, and spirit. It is not a fighting kata. It is an active meditation. So I think that meditative process is important. I also exercise and try to be very physically active because it's a way of channeling my energy. And then when I have something that I need to do or that I'm pursuing, I can't be totally single-minded because there's a lot going on as an entrepreneur, but I try not to do everything at once. I try to give myself the room to, I'm doing this, I'm going to stay focused on this. Then I'm doing the next thing, I'm doing that thing. Then I'm doing the next thing, I'm doing that thing. Like, for example, if I'm with my kids, I'm usually not
You're
on
with
the
your
phone.
kids.
I'm with my kids. I will sometimes have to take a call and I will let them know in advance. At this and this time, Daddy will go take a call. You guys will talk amongst yourselves. You walk, I'll walk behind you or whatever it is. Or we sit at them, I'll go in another room or whatever. I'll let them know in advance. But for the most part, if it's time with the kids, I'm not going to do calls. I'm not going to send emails. I'm going to focus on that. I've been in meetings where people are like, you don't seem to get distracted. I'm like, yeah, unless my daughter calls me, I won't pick up the phone. I'm present. And I think that is one of the most valuable things to me is how to embrace the moment. And I started with the martial arts because martial arts forces you to learn this in very tangible ways. If you're distracted, you could get hurt. So you learn to focus fast. And I think that ability to snap into focus and to stay there is one that has been extremely helpful in everything that I do.
Yeah. So which form of martial arts?
So I teach a form of karate, of Okinawan karate called Wichi-ryu. And that is a style that came over from southern China in 1913 into Okinawa, and it was first taught in Japan years later. And the founder was a man named Kanbun Wichi. His son, Kanai Wichi, took it and modernized it and formalized it into what we have today. So it's a kind of self-defense martial art. It's very kinetic. It is close-in fighting, but it's also really interesting because it's not just like the hard blocks that you would expect. It's like blocks that are fluid, flowing. And so you think, oh, those look super soft and super, oh my God, what's all that? And what all that will break your arm. And so what happens is it's we do a lot of like physical conditioning, hit hard, take hard hits. It's in the moment. It's tactile. It's not theoretical when you did it wrong. It hurts like hell. However, I've learned that like I was trained in the old school, which is very painful. But now I've learned to teach people where I can walk them through like the basic elements and we can help children to learn. And I work with women and how do you learn to defend yourself? And as we start to learn how to stand, how to hold your body, how to balance, how to move, how to flow, and how to strike, then we can add the hard elements as we go. The hard elements are the easiest to learn. The soft elements are much more advanced because you have to learn the soft element. All it means is that I'm going to use my opponent's energy against them. There are some martial arts where all they do is try to use the opponent's energy against them. And so sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. Sometimes you have to create kinetic energy. And so I believe in teaching the hard elements first and then integrating the philosophy around the soft elements from the beginning. And then the conditioning of how do you prepare your body for actual fighting. We just take it little by little until, as a kid, they're old enough, around 14, 15, where we can start getting into it. Or for women, until they feel comfortable with how they move in order to get it. With guys who play rough, we could start out the gate. But I think there are many more people that can benefit from this. And one of my senseis was a very powerful Brazilian woman, extraordinary fighter. And I looked at how she went about teaching. And I looked at how some of the moms would come to the children's class. I would teach a children's class because I had kids. Nobody else wanted to deal with it. I was the only one, but it's not, the children's class is chaos. But I had to teach it and it was fun. And I started to realize the mommies were in the back, And I was like, oh, they want to learn. They should learn. Who more should learn to defend themselves, right? So I think that what's great for me is the ability to take what I've learned and adjust it to accommodate a broader swath of people. But ultimately, we get to the same place, which is how do you defend yourself vigorously and effectively in a situation where you have no choice.
And that's the key, when you have no choice. That's the world we're living in. Wow. I could talk to you for hours, and I know I want to be respectful of your time. So I want to just ask you, you kind of talked about what's new and next, but what's new and next for you? Where do you see the next 12 months? We're at the end of 2025. What is 2026 looking like for you?
Yeah, at the end of 2026 is going to be hardcore working on what I'm doing now. And this time next year, you will hear about what we're launching. And I think it's going to be really exciting. I'm super proud. I'm super grateful for the people I get to work with. I also see spending a great deal of time with my kids because they are amazing. And just, I will say that we have all these conversations in the world today about like birth rates and demographics and this and that. And it's a difficult conversation because how do you make people have babies? Everybody's not going to do it. It's not right for everyone. At the same time, I think for me, it was a life goal. I wanted to have kids. And I feel so blessed that I did. So part of what I'm going to do this year is work with them on some of their creativity and some of their activities and their technology and their athletic pursuits. I'm going to spend more time of what I've learned giving into what they're doing because they are like the 2.0 version for real. And I see great things for them and I'm excited to get to do that. And I feel like it's a blessing to pursue my dreams in a way that uplifts theirs. And I hope that's what I'm able to accomplish in the next year and more.
It gives me chills when I hear people who just want to pour into young people, and I love it. And that's the answer, right? Because that's my vision. Is like, how do we get young people to be the leaders that we need? Because we are flailing, and they need to know more about how to be that.
Absolutely, we need to invest in them. We need to take it seriously. Absolutely. Like They're not an
Exactly.
afterthought. And it goes back to what we were saying about
Exactly.
climate, right? You have an
Yeah.
older generation. I'm not blaming everybody, but there are a lot of people that have done very well by focusing on the here and now and what they can get today and forget about everyone else and tomorrow. And I think that our generation needs to completely let that go. We need to invest. The best time to plant a tree is 50 years ago. The
Yeah.
second best time to plant a tree is today,
Right now.
right? Old Africans say. So
Hmm.
we need to start thinking along those 50-year time horizons. What will my
Yes.
children's children benefit be of the investment that I make today? And I think there's no shame in thinking bigger than oneself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you started to talk a little bit about who you are when you're not working, but I like to ask a specific question. Are you a reader? Are you a watcher? Are you a listener? Or what else do you do in your leisure time? And if you are, what are some of your favorite reads, watches, or listens?
I'm a musician, so I like to make music. I sing apparently 24/7. I didn't realize when
Okay.
people are like, you never stop making sounds. I'm like, oh, not bad. Music is in my heart. But yeah, so I like to create. I do like to watch. I watch shows. I like sci-fi and fantasy shows. I used to love to read. My favorite books were Isaac Asimov, the Foundation series, Lord of the
Uh-huh.
Rings, by J.R.R. Tolkien, trying to introduce these things to my kids at the age that's appropriate. But right now, I'm really spending time listening to and watching other creators because I'm creating some things that I think are important, and I'm helping my
Mhm.
kids create some things too. So I'm very much in a maker space in my life right.
Yeah, I feel you there. I feel you there. What is your favorite song to sing, if there is one?
The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? No evil one. I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and I fear no evil. I fear no man. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? No evil one. I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and baby, I fear no evil, I fear no man.
Love it. Awesome. Now, tell us who that artist is.
That's Artist is me.
Wow. Okay. You are a musician. That is your song.
That is my song. I'm in a maker space.
I love it. You are in a makerspace. I love it. Well, Derrick, this has been so awesome. I really, really appreciate your time. I am looking forward to your new next, your new now, and just staying in touch. I'm glad that we've connected and looking forward to more. So, do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners before we say goodbye?
I am grateful to you for having these kinds of conversations. I think that the whole idea of thinking about our local essence and how it steps onto the global stage and our understanding of it is important. I think that
Thank
people around
you.
the world should be proud to bring themselves, their culture to the global table, and we can sit and learn and understand and connect together. And I think you're a wonderful example of that. Thank you for inviting me to your space.
Thank you so, so much. Thank you. All right, Glocal citizens, this has been another episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Please do like, share, subscribe, check out the show notes. You can get so many extra tips with all the things we speak about in our conversation. And join the conversation. Please ask us questions, send us future guests, that kind of thing, because engagement is key. I think we've kind of hit on that in this conversation and always. So until next time, bye for now.